Yarvin wrote somewhere, "It is very difficult to argue that the Civil War made anyone's life more pleasant, including that of freed slaves." And by the way, in the actual quote, Yarvin calls it the War of Secession, not the Civil War, which is a tell. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about people who I used to argue with in my youth about Civil War stuff, is they would do all this sort of Mott and Bailey kind of thing where they would make an argument that sounded like the Civil War should never have been fought, that the slaves should never be freed. And then when you press them on it, they retreat to these hyper literal, well, that's not exactly what I said. They're perfectly fine with people taking that impression because it's kind of a dog whistle to the people who actually believe that, while also sort of somewhat immunizing yourself against people who don't believe that. The idea that the Civil War didn't make people's lives better, if you want to talk about, like, certainly it was a horrible war and lots of people died and lots of people were maimed, I got no problem conceding that. But the whole sort of smirking trollishness of it is to suggest that, well, then we shouldn't have had the Civil War at all, and we shouldn't have freed the slaves. Now, I'm not saying that he actually defends slavery. The reason we had a Civil War over slavery, in effect, because ultimately it really was about slavery, was because the slaveholders didn't want to give up slavery. Somehow, it's always the fault of Lincoln and the people who wanted to end slavery and save the Union that the war was fought, and not the fault of the secessionists and the slaveholders. And to leave the impression, no matter how vague, that somehow black people would be better off if the Civil War never happened and the slaves weren't freed, is grotesque.